The Indians reported to spring training on Wednesday. You know, it's kind of a magic words for some of us who grew up in baseball fans, you know. Pitchers and catchers report. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video talking about the current Indians right now, which, by the way, for all the gnashing of teeth and all the angst and all the we're going to eat dirt and die because the payroll's been cut and the team's not that good, those of us of a certain age, those of us who follow the Indians and maybe grew up with them between 1960 and 1993, those of us, when you talk about the ballpark, it's the old municipal stadium. Those of us never had a team as good as this one to follow. I mean, it's just a fact. But then again, those of us kind of go back there and you think pitchers and catchers report. And to my mind, kind of names run through my head. You know, Rocky Colavito. I remember how exciting it was to me when Rocky came back to the Indians in 1965. He had been traded at the end of the '59 season, and in 1965 he came back. It's kind of my book, The Curse of Rocky Colavito, was about how Colavito had led the league in homers in '59, got traded to Detroit for a guy named Harvey Keene, and then the Indians brought him back, and he had one big year there. But the fact being, the last time the Indians were good, 1959, is then they traded Colavito after that. You know, Leon Wagner was a player that I grew up with, and I loved Leon Wagner, Daddy Wags. For a while, he had a clothing store out in Los Angeles. You know, buy your rags from Daddy Wags. That was his own, kind of his motto that he had. Vic Davalillo was one of those players from back then. You could go on. I remember for a little while, the Indians had a reliever, a guy named Stan Williams. I just liked him. They had a utility infielder who couldn't hit. I don't know why, but I liked him too. And his name was Freddie Stanley. And maybe, you know, as you look at your Indians, maybe your Indians are Super Joe Charboneau, 1980, Rookie of the Year. I was my second year as a baseball writer and my first at the Plain Dealer, and there was Super Joe Charboneau. For better or worse, I nicknamed him Super Joe. And it came from a thing, Super Joe from Kokomo. But Charboneau, you know, the one-year flash, that was exciting. I recently wrote about Frank Robinson, 1975, hitting a homer in his first at-bat, first African-American manager. But as I was thinking about Frank Robinson, thinking back, some names popped into my head. You know, Dwayne Kuiper, Rick Manning. Actually, before that, a guy named Rico Carty, the Big Mon, as he used to call himself, the Rico Carty. And as pitchers and catchers report, you know, it's just kind of running through my head, and a lot of baseball people are like that, just sort of names. I got an email from a guy and said, yeah, I was looking through my older baseball cards. Think about this. And I saw from the middle 60s, for a couple of years, he used to have these Topps rookie cards. And I saw the name Bill Davis. He was always one of the Indians' top rookies, and he had all these homers in the minors. Whatever happened to Bill Davis? And I do remember Bill Davis. I don't remember seeing him play because he hardly played in the big leagues. I looked it up. Bill Davis ruptured his Achilles. Back then, they were never able to repair it. You know, we never got to see much of Bill Davis. I remember another phenom, as a pitcher named Eric Wilkins, was up for a little bit, hurt his elbow. Goodbye. You know, there's a scene from where these guys went to a dude ranch. Billy Crystal, the comic, was in it. And all of a sudden, a couple of these guys are sitting around, and they just start naming names of baseball players. And they just start laughing. You know, Crystal was a Yankee fan, and I think some other guys were naming old Pirates. But it is funny, I think more in baseball than anywhere else, you know, you think pitchers and catchers report, but just like the past comes into the present. And you just start naming names. You know, you go back and all of a sudden there you are. I remember like 1980, because while I had covered the Orioles in 1979 for the Baltimore Evening Sun, I walked into that press box in 1980 as the baseball writer for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which was one of my dream jobs. You know, I sat in the same place that Rush Snyder had sat, and sat with Hal Lebowitz, and all Dan Coughlin, these guys that I grew up reading. And I go back, but I was thinking about some of the guys on that team. A guy named George Orta was there. The shortstop was Tommy Verizor. At third base, they had Toby Hara. First base was Mike Hargrove. Second base was Dwayne Kuiper. Catching, they had Ron Hasse. I can't remember what I had for breakfast the other day, and I just named the whole infield, the 1980 Indians. And the outfield, Joe Charboneau on the left, Rick Manning in center, George Orta in right. By the way, no scribbles in my notebook. I didn't look it up. It all came back to mind. Opening day pitcher that day was Rick Waits. So there you are, pitchers and catchers report. Just let your memory go back and enjoy.